So I see the autonomous vehicle industry as a great preview of what we are all going to face in our own industries. As we look at their effort to drive autonomy into the auto industry, you can step back and think about how this will play out as agents start coming into your industry. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Roetzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 119 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Roetzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput. We have an interesting week. There was not a crazy amount of product announcements and news, but just some big things. We had the Dario Amodei essay we're going to kind of dive into. We had a We Robot event from Tesla. We had Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia, doing a wide-ranging podcast. So there's some macro stuff to talk about today. And I think I don't know, Mike, this is I spend more time prepping for this podcast than most because the depth of the stuff we needed to talk about and sort of synthesize and figure out the meaning in between everything. I don't know, there was a lot. So my Sunday night my brain was on overdrive when I finally went to bed Sunday night getting ready for this.
Yeah, I feel like this week was just the theme is buckle up for AGI or something.
Yeah, it was setting the stage, and Amodei's essay on the back of Altman's essay, a few weeks back. And it's all these big AI researchers and entrepreneurs are preparing us, I think, for something that's coming soon. As we'll talk about, Dario definitely thinks it's coming soon.
Right.
So plenty to talk about. We're recording this Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, October 14th, just to timestamp it for you. Today's episode is brought to us by Rasa.io. We've talked about Rasa recently. If you're looking for an AI tool that makes staying in front of your audience easy, you should definitely check out Rasa.io. Their smart newsletter platform does the impossible by tailoring each email newsletter for each subscriber, ensuring every email you send is not just relevant, but compelling, and it also saves you time. We've known the team at Rasa.io for about 6 years now. They were one of our early partners at Marketing AI Institute when I first launched it, and no one else is doing newsletters like they are. They're offering a 5% discount with the code 5MAII when you sign up. So visit Rasa.io/MAII today. Once again, that's Rasa.io/MAII today. And this episode is also brought to us by our Scaling AI webinar. So we have our Scaling AI paid course series, but I also do a free monthly webinar where we go through the 5 core steps. So you can build a smarter version of any business with AI for marketing, sales, and service. Our obvious value drivers with hundreds or thousands of use cases. Leaders who scale AI for the greatest impact will infuse it across all functions of the organization, which means you have an unprecedented opportunity to reimagine your business and reinvent your industry. So how do you do that? Register for the upcoming webinar. 5 essential steps to scaling AI in your organization is coming up on October 16th. So that is this week. You will learn a framework that I've taught to thousands of corporate, education, and government leaders. In the webinar, we'll go through key trends in AI impacting businesses today, how to overcome obstacles to AI adoption, effects of AI in the economy, industries and career paths, processes to build an AI-savvy workforce, and more, including those 5 steps that we talked about. The webinar takes place Wednesday, October 16th at noon Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go to scalingai.com, register, and click on register for our upcoming webinar. So right at the top, you can buy the series, but right under that is a button to register for our upcoming webinar. Just click on that and you'll get signed up. If you cannot make it at noon on October 16th, we will send you an on-demand access to it. It's live for about a week after. So definitely register, get your email in there, and you will get an email from our team with access to that webinar. It's I go for about 35 minutes or so presenting the framework, and then we do Q&A live. So the whole thing is live. Again, I run it every 4 weeks. I think this is our 4th or 5th edition of this webinar. So definitely check it out. Again, scalingai.com. You can learn more about the webinar, and you can also learn more about the course series. Okay, Mike, this is one I was like, I don't know, man. This is gonna be hard to like go back to a regular Monday and after we finish talking about all this stuff is some big things. It was hard to pick, honestly, the main topics today. There was a lot going on that would have warranted spending some time exploring.
All right, so let's dive in then. So first up, we have Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei is making some big waves in the AI community and beyond with releasing a massive 15,000 word essay that looks at a very optimistic picture of AI's future impact on society. Now, he outlines in this essay a very bold vision that's quite inspiring, but it's also raising eyebrows and sparking debate about the realistic potential and risks of AI. So this essay is titled Machines of Loving Grace, and it has the subtitle, How AI Could Transform the World for the Better. Now, the title of this essay immediately gives you a footnote because, like, your first question is, what does this title mean? It goes to a poem by a poet, Richard Brautigan, titled All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. And this basically is a short poem that envisions the perfect harmonious existence between technology, humanity, and nature. The essay itself then dives into some radical predictions that Amodei has for how this positive future could play out with AI. So we're going to talk about a lot of them, but a few that really jump out, which he goes in depth into over literally thousands of words. First up, he kind of basically predicts that what he calls, quote, powerful AI, he says he doesn't like the term AGI, but he's basically talking about extremely competent, extremely powerful AI. He predicts it could arrive as soon as 2026. And literally in his definition, which he outlines, powerful AI is AI that surpasses Nobel Prize winners in most fields in terms of intelligence. It's AI that can engage in actions, can go accomplish tasks autonomously, and potentially even collaborate with millions of copies of itself to achieve goals. So once we have this powerful AI, Amodei then predicts huge impacts on a bunch of key areas. He decides to highlight a handful that are really relevant to him, in his opinion, though he admits beyond these few, there's also a ton of other impacts. So he focuses on biology, neuroscience, kind of global economic development, governance, and the future of work. So I'm just going to list out a few of the more radical predictions. There are literally tons of them in there. But for instance, he claims that AI could cure most diseases, eliminate cancers, and halt Alzheimer's within 7 to 12 years, and predicts AI develop drugs for mental health conditions within 5 to 10 years. He predicts AI could cause the average human lifespan to double to 150 years. He believes AI could solve world hunger and reverse climate change, and that it could also cause dramatic economic growth in developing countries. And he suggests Sub-Saharan Africa's GDP, for instance, could end up matching China's current level within a decade. Now, additionally, Amodei kind of acknowledges that AI is going to disrupt the job market, but he believes humans will retain some comparative advantage for at least a little while, where we're basically able to complement AI's capabilities. But he also says that, quote, in the long run, this AI is going to become so broadly effective and so cheap that at some point, basically, our current economic setup will no longer make sense. So, Paul, that's just kind of a taste of all the stuff he goes into here. There's a lot to unpack here. I'd say let's start at the beginning. Like, why is Amodei's perspective on this subject important? Which parts of this essay strike you as particularly worth paying attention to?
Just a reminder who he is, to your point, why does he matter? Why does his opinion matter? So he led the team at OpenAI that was building GPT-2 and then GPT-3. After doing that, prior to doing that, he was a senior research scientist at Google Brain for about a year. But after leading the team building GPT-3, he saw the opportunity to build a language model company, to build a frontier model company. He saw a window of opportunity to do this. He left OpenAI in 2021, took about 10% of the staff with him, founded Anthropic, So he is the co-founder and CEO. They have raised 7.6 billion to date. We talked about them in one of the recent podcast episodes that they're rumored to be raising again at a $40 billion valuation is what's being talked about. So when we look out to the companies that will build the largest, most generally capable models, there's probably five. We have OpenAI, obviously. We have Google, Meta, Anthropic, and xAI, Elon Musk's company, which we'll talk more about in a few minutes. There's some other players building frontier models. People are going to build smaller models, like Mistral, is kind of in the running right now. Probably won't last. It's going to be really, really hard to raise at the levels these companies are going to raise at. So those five appear to be the primary ones that are going to build the biggest models. So what Dario says, like, we should care about, and what he thinks happens next matters to us, because if that's what he is envisioning, he's one of the five main people that are kind of building the future. And as we talked about in previous episodes, going back to last year, he doesn't talk much. Like, he doesn't do many interviews. He's not like Sam Altman. He's not active on Twitter. Like, it's hard to get at where Dario is at, but he does show up every once in a while and either do long form podcast episodes like with Dwarkesh, or he drops an essay of 15,000 words and lets us know what he's up to. So, I think right away in the opening, he makes an important point. So he says, people sometimes draw the conclusion that I'm a pessimist or a doomer who thinks AI will be mostly bad or dangerous. Now, keep in mind, they supported SB 1047. So Anthropic was for the legislation that we talked a lot about that was going on in California that eventually got vetoed by the governor. So that's why he's saying, like, people think I'm like a doomer or I'm the one that's trying to get regulation. He said, I don't think that at all. In fact, one of the main reasons for focusing on risks is that they're the only thing standing between us and what I see as a fundamentally positive future. I think that most people are underestimating just how radical the upside of AI could be, just as I think most people are underestimating how bad the risks could be. So he says that in this essay, he wanted to sketch out what he would say, quote, a world with powerful AI might look like if everything goes right. And then, as you said, he focused on kind of these five core areas because he has a background in neuroscience and biology. He has a reasonable background in economic development, and then just kind of his grand visions for peace and governance and work and meeting. So you touched a little bit on, the powerful AI. We've talked so many times about this. Like, we can't agree on what AGI is, and then we have some people who don't even want to use the term AGI. So now we've got powerful AI in the mix. And so I thought it was interesting how he kind of broke it out. So he said, I have in mind an AI model likely similar to today's LLMs in form, though it might be based on a different architecture, meaning maybe not the transformer, or a new version of the transformer is kind of what he's implying there, might involve several interacting models and might be trained differently. So these are a lot of like mights for something that he thinks is very near term, which I immediately found kind of interesting and would imply to me that maybe they already have some new approaches to architectures kind of thing. So then you touched on the Nobel Prize winner thing. Now, the interesting thing here is, and again, I'm going to come back to his timelines in a moment, but I think it's really important to set the stage of where he's envisioning this. So smarter than a Nobel Prize winner across most relevant fields. On a recent episode, we talked about Google DeepMind's levels of AGI. Their levels of AGI, which we'll put the link to in the show notes, is 0, no AI, all the way up to level 5, which is superhuman, outperforming 100% of humans. Level 4 is virtuoso, at least 99th percentile of skilled adults. He's basically saying that this powerful AI will be level 4 to level 5 in Google DeepMind's levels of AGI. So that's an important distinction. He says it'll be, this is my words describing, summarizing, multimodal and agentic. So he specifically says, quote, it has all the interfaces available to a human working virtually, including text, audio, video, mouse and keyboard control, and internet access. So it can do everything we can do in an online world, basically. It can engage in any actions, communications, remote operations, enabled with this interface, including taking actions on the internet, taking or giving directions to humans, ordering materials, directing experiments, watching videos, etc. So again, We're going to come back to his timeline. Keep in mind what he thinks this powerful AI is. This is a significant advancement. The next one I summarized again as advanced reasoning and agentic. So in his words, it does not have just passively answer questions. It can be given tasks and take hours, days, or weeks to complete, and then go off and does those tasks autonomously in the way a smart employee would, asking for clarification as necessary. Um, it can control existing physical tools, robots, and laboratory equipment through a computer. This is an important one. The resources used to train the model can be repurposed to run millions of instances of it. And the model can absorb information and generate actions at roughly 10 to 100 times human speed. It may, however, be limited by response time of the physical world or of software it interacts with. Now, again, this is starting to sound really sci-fi to people. If you're not like following along really closely with what's going on and kind of the frontiers here, this is starting to sound sci-fi. But the people who have been paying close attention, this all aligns. This lines up with the situational awareness paper from Leopold. It lines up with what we're hearing from OpenAI. Like nothing I've seen here is anything new to me because this is what they're all talking about. And then the one that gets kind of crazy is each of these millions of copies can act independently on unrelated tasks, or if needed, can all work together in the same way humans would collaborate, perhaps with different subpopulations fine-tuned to especially good at particular tasks. Now, this brings in the OpenAI levels of AI we've talked about. So in OpenAI's levels of AI, we have level 1 chatbots, level 2 reasoners, which we got a preview of with O1, level 3 agents, which we're seeing demonstrations of right now, and in a year or two, they might be reliable. Level 4 innovators, that's where they're coming up with new science, basically. Level 5 organizations, dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions of agents working together to run a company, which brings us to the Ilya Sutskever quote from July 2023 that we've talked about, where he said, "The way I think about the AI of the future is not as someone as smart as you or as smart as me, but as an automated organization. Its constituent AIs would work and communicate at high speeds like bees in a hive. A single such AI organization would be as powerful as 50 Apples or Googles." Ilya and Dario worked together at OpenAI. They certainly probably shared ideas around these things. I'm going to come back to Jensen Huang's quote about this in a minute, but what Dario then finishes with is he thinks of this future as a country of geniuses in a data center. So when is he envisioning all of this? Well, as you said, he thinks as early as 2026. So everything I just outlined, if he's envisioning that by 2026, that means nothing we just talked about does he see as impossible with 1 to 2 generations of models from now. That GPT-6, Claude 5, they're seeing a scientifically possible path to achieving everything that was just outlined. So that brought me back last night, and again, why I was like now having trouble sleeping on a Sunday night, to episode 94, which you'll remember well, Mike. We will put the link to episode 94. Episode 94 is when we talked about Anthropic's AI safety levels. So this is when we went into the Ezra Klein interview with Dario Amodei. And in that interview, they talked about these safety levels. So they have ASL1, or AI safety level 1, refers to systems which pose no meaningful catastrophic risk. Like example, 2018 LLMs is how they kind of. Level 2 is present large language models. This is where they would put Claude and Gemini and things like that. Refers to systems that show early signs of dangerous capabilities, but they can kind of control it. Level 3, significantly higher risk, refers to systems that substantially increase the risk of catastrophic misuse. So this is, we didn't know yet. This is kind of, they're like, these are theoretical levels at this point. Mm-hmm. And then level 4 is speculative and higher. It's not defined yet. Like we don't even know how to measure it. So in the interview that we talked about on episode 94, Ezra said, when you imagine how many years away just roughly ASL 3 is and how many years away ASL 4 is, you've thought a lot about this exponential scaling curve. If you just had to guess, what are we talking about? And he said, yeah, I think ASL 3 could easily happen this year or next. I think ASL4, at which point Ezra Klein interrupted and said, oh, Jesus Christ. And then Dario said, no, 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 I told you, I'm a believer in exponentials. I think ASL4 could happen anywhere between 2025 and 2028, which Ezra then said, if you don't believe these models will ever become so powerful, they become dangerous, fine. But you do believe that. How do you imagine this actually playing out? To which Dario said, look, I don't have an answer for that. Like, I'm one of the significant number of players trying to navigate this. Many are well-intentioned, some are not. I have a limited ability to affect it. So the reason I bring this back up is because everything in this essay continues to imply that the models they're building will be ASL 3 or 4, their own levels of threat, basically, within the next 1 to 2 years. And that interview was from, I think, April of this year is when we talked about
I
that
think
one.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about like 5 months later or so, 6 months later, he's continuing on this path. And so I don't know, like his vision for where this goes. The way I think about this, to kind of summarize, I guess, is there's a handful of entrepreneurs and AI researchers who are envisioning and building the future. As Dario said, he's one of them. He doesn't think he has that much ability to affect this, and yet they're the ones building the models. So this is why Mike and I are spending time on this kind of thing. The article is out there. Like, it feels weird when you're reading it. It feels too sci-fi, but it's not. Like, they're making decisions right now, and the paths that they choose to pursue will affect all of us, all of our kids, all of our communities, like our businesses. All of it's going to be affected by the decision these 5 companies are making. And so what they think, say, and do matters. Now, I choose to be optimistic about the future, but the reality is there's a bunch of known risks and there's a bunch of unknown risks. And so the only way we can see through this is by being informed about it and then being intentional at our individual levels, like the best we can, in choosing a responsible application of AI in our business, in our industry, in our career, in our schools. Because I do truly believe, like Dario, that the future can be abundant and incredible if we choose to be responsible and human-centered. And I still have concerns that the 5 main companies that are driving the future of humanity, I don't know that they're really that aligned on what that looks like. Because we can't agree on what AGI is. We can't even call it the same thing anymore. And so I don't know, man. Like, this was, like I said, this is a hard one to prep for, because this was a lot to think about on a Sunday night. And then to go back to that episode 94, which I found kind of unnerving at the time.
Yeah. I think one thing that jumped out to me is you and I have been following some version of the AGI conversation long before it became in vogue to start talking about. But if he had published this essay 3 years ago, it would have been laughed out of off.
Nobody would pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Moore's Law for everything from Sam Altman in 2021. People just ignored it.
Yeah.
Outside of the AI research community, like, it was just too out there. And I agree with you. I think too many business leaders, government leaders, educational system leaders will look at this and think it's crazy and it's sci-fi and it's not something they have to think about. All we're saying is they think you should be thinking about it. Like, they think that we are within 1 to 2 years of this being a reality. And that can be incredible over the next decade. It can lead to all these incredible breakthroughs in biology and, society, and solving hunger and diseases, and all of these things can happen, but they are not promised. Like, if everything goes right, is basically what he said. This is an essay of if everything goes right.
Right.
And so he spends all his time thinking about how it goes wrong to try and ensure that we have the best possible future. But he even at the end says, I'm not even sure that this is the future most people would want. It's just what he thinks is a beautiful future.
So to kind of wrap this topic up here, I guess like the burning question I have is, if you kick off your essay saying, I believe in the next handful of years, we're going to have AIs that are Nobel Prize winners functionally at many, if not most things. How do you not spend half this essay talking about the impact on everyone else's work who's not a Nobel Prize winner? Like, I just found it very hard to imagine in a world like that humans would have any comparative advantage for a second.
Well, he does address that, because the economy and work is the one at the end. And he said, let's see, he started that off with AIs doing everything. How will humans have meaning? For that matter, how will they survive economically? And then he basically says like, hey, this is kind of the one I have the least to say about, like that I know the least about. But he said it's worth saying a few words while keeping in mind that the brevity of this section is not at all meant to be taken as a sign that I don't take these issues seriously. On the contrary, it's a sign of a lack of clear answers. So he gets into like the meaning of humans and the meaning
Yeah.
of work. And yeah, he's basically just saying like it's gonna get strange, and I don't really know what to tell you, but I think the GDP will go up dramatically, and that should create more opportunities for people to do work. And even if they're only doing 10% of what they used to do, they should still get some meaning from that. It's very clear they don't know. And again, Sam Altman is asked point blank about this. He doesn't know. Like, this is my biggest concern is it's like not to like, I never want to create this, like, again, fear factor about any of this, but the reality is they all think that within 2 years, the economy looks very different. Jobs look very different. And yet none of them have an answer for what that means or even a reasonable idea. Like,
Right.
there's no policy ideas other than universal basic income. Like, that's the thing. And he even threw that out. He's like, maybe it's that, or maybe it's not. I don't know. Like, how is that not the thing that we're not spending more time studying? Like,
That
I
yeah.
just don't get it.
Yeah, that's kinda what I'm getting at is like, yeah, there's I totally respect this is not an easy problem to solve, but it's like, if it's coming this soon,
Yeah.
we are
Let's
nowhere
go.
near happy.
Somebody,
Yeah,
some of the government, Google,
mhm,
Microsoft, I don't care who it is, somebody needs to make this their thing. Like, we gotta figure this out. We need deep studies about the future of the economy. Not we can't be looking backwards. That's what economists do. They look
right,
backwards to try and figure out the future. That is not going to help us here.
and we know some of those people are listeners, so I hope
Yeah,
they hear this
yeah.
episode.
Somebody do something. We'll help. Like, call me. Like, I will do whatever we can, but I don't have the money it's going to take to do this.
All right. So, our second big topic this week, Tesla had a highly anticipated event called We Robot that showcased the company's ambitious vision for the future of autonomous transportation and robotics. There were some pretty key announcements at this event that included things like the Cybercab, which is a two-seater autonomous vehicle without a steering wheel or pedals that has an expected cost allegedly of under $30,000 and a projected operating cost of 20 to 30 cents per mile. They also unveiled the RoboVan, a large autonomous vehicle for up to 20 passengers or a goods transport that's basically being positioned as a solution for high density urban transport. Elon Musk talked about full self driving, FSD. There are plans to launch unsupervised FSD in Texas and California by 2025. And that's going to start with the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y. And last but certainly not least, they showcased the Optimus humanoid robot. They showed Optimus robots performing tasks like bartending and playing games at the event, and projected that the retail price would be $20,000 to $30,000. Elon Musk also claimed the Optimus would be able to perform a wide range of household tasks once it comes out. However, the event also drew a bit of criticism for a lack of concrete timelines and maybe some misleading demonstrations, like Musk admitted to being optimistic with timeframes, with production dates for Cybercab set vaguely for, quote, before 2027. Reports did start coming out that suggested the Optimus robots at the event were teleoperated rather than fully autonomous. There are a ton of questions about, can Tesla actually gain approval for vehicles without traditional controls like a steering wheel or pedals? There's existing safety concerns already related to existing FSD technology. There's been scrutiny following some accidents and basically a bunch of questions. Are we actually ready for full autonomy? And critics also just noted a shortage of concrete information on how any of these technologies would handle adverse situations or complex scenarios. Now, biggest thing was the market also weighed in because the day after the event, Tesla stock plummeted by 9%. So, Paul, let's first talk about the event itself. You're a Tesla owner, you're an AI expert, close follower of what Tesla's doing. I think you've got a more solid perspective on this than most people out there. Like, what did you take away from this event and what it means for AI?
Yeah, so I think the reason we're going to cover this as a main topic today is because what Tesla's doing matters in the sense that it's a prelude to other industries pursuing autonomy. So if you think about, and I'll explain what that means in a moment, but basically, as we look at their effort to drive autonomy into the auto industry, you can step back and think about how this will play out as agents start coming into your industry that in theory can do the work of the human, initially with human supervision, and then maybe eventually without human supervision. So I see the autonomous vehicle industry as a great preview of what we are all going to face in our own industries. So with that being said, so this was originally supposed to be in August. They delayed it to October for whatever reason. They didn't say, but the assumption was they just weren't ready. It's probably best to describe this as a show. They did show the robo taxi or cyber cabs. They previewed this van. They had the robots that were absolutely human controlled. Like I'm actually still shocked that people weren't sure on site whether they were or not. Like within 3 seconds of hearing one of them speak the first time, it was very obvious that these were not robots talking. This was not a language model talking to you.
Mm.
So the robots were absolutely controlled. They said, I think if you asked the robot on site, they said they were human assisted is how they explained it, but they were 100% like being controlled by humans and the voices were coming from humans. So it was a show. The most near-term potential one is the Cybercab, which is the 2-seater, no steering wheel. If you read the Elon Musk bio by Walter Isaacson, it actually tells the origin story of the Cybercab. There's like a great background of Elon Musk's efforts to have them build the thing with no steering wheel and his engineers fighting him over it and all this stuff. So he did say that, between probably 2026 before 2027, and this is where his timelines become optimistic. But here's my thoughts on the full self-driving. So my current Tesla has full self-driving supervised is what they call it. If there's anybody that also has one, 12.5.4.1, that is the current release version I have of this.
Yeah.
So they've been on a schedule where they're updating the software every like 2 to 3 weeks. You'll get a push and it'll go 12.4.5, 12.4.6, and eventually they'll jump to 13 whenever the next breakthrough is, I guess. So I'm going to share the experience here because I think it is instructive of how agentic systems might learn and might play out in your industry. So the Tesla today that I have, the full self-driving, which you can just put an address in and hit go, and it will drive you on city streets, on highways and everything. It is level 2 in terms of autonomy. We'll put a link to the SAE levels of driving automation in the show notes. There's actually an industry standard for what levels of autonomy are in the industry. Basic premise is, what does the driver do? That's how they kind of determine these. So the full self-driving supervised that Tesla currently has is level 2. So if you think about this in your job, let's say your CRM or your accounting system or your legal analysis system, the human's got to be there at all times, in control, responsible for the outcomes of the system. That's kind of what level 2 is. The human is totally in the loop at all times. Waymo is level 4. If anybody's been in a Waymo out in California or Arizona or whatever, but Waymo can't scale like commercially because they have a hardware problem. They're ugly. They have massive systems on the cars. Like they're not like a beautiful Tesla. So Waymo's got a hardware problem. Tesla's trying to solve a software problem. The problem they currently face, and this is why I don't understand how the Cybercab works, if it is drizzling out, my full self-driving is useless. It will either shut itself off or it'll say it's degraded and it can't do what it's supposed to do because there's raindrops on one of the cameras. It can't function if it's snowing out for the same reasons. If one of the cameras gets blocked, the system is useless. They never talk about this. I've asked online, can someone explain to me how they're going to solve this? I don't know how they solve that. It still makes simple errors. It'll swerve into the berm when you're trying to get off the freeway. It'll go at wrong speeds. It'll change lanes unnecessarily. It'll cut people off. Like it still does this. Now, if you follow Elon and like the Tesla fan people online, you don't hear this. Now, part of it is because in California, I think they actually label the data specifically for routes where there's a lot of Teslas, including Elon's personal routes.
Yeah.
So Elon's experience driving a Tesla is actually very different than mine because the engineers are labeling the data on his routes to make sure that it's like perfect for what he's doing. So the way they do this is they monitor miles per disengagement. So to disengage the system is I have to take over. Like the human has to grab control of the system and say, okay, I'm back in control. When you do that in a Tesla, a prompt pops up and says, why did you disengage? Send us a voice thing. And you can actually click the voice button and record up to 15 seconds and tell them why you did it. So think of this when you start using agents in your company next year, you have to think of actions per intervention is kind of like the term I started coming up with myself this morning, thinking about this. So if I'm going to use an AI agent to do my emails or to do my customer service or to do my sales outreach, how often do I, as the human, have to intervene and stop the agent from doing something wrong or fix something it did? And so that's basically how they're doing it. And I think I heard Elon recently say they wanted to get to they want to get to 10,000 miles per disengagement is like their current goal. And then eventually like 1,000,000 miles driven per disengagement, meaning they don't ever want the human to have to like interact with this thing. When I use the thing on city streets, I can't imagine going more than 2 to 3 miles without a disengagement. I do it all the time. On highways, maybe you can get a dozen, 2 dozen on a straight stretch. You have to intervene all the time. This is what I think agents are going to be like. So when we hear about agents in our careers and our businesses, I envision having these cool systems. And when they work, they're amazing. Like full self-driving is incredible when it works. But a lot of times it doesn't. And then I have to interact with it to tell it what's wrong. And I think that's how agents are going to work. Like we're going to have these email and customer service and sales agents, but we're going to have to oversee them. We're going to have to intervene. And the software companies are going to have to monitor how often are we intervening? Like what's going on? And if they see spikes in it, they're going to know their agents aren't working properly. And so that's like something to keep in mind. And then I realized the other day, like the breakthrough for them is going to come when I can talk to my Tesla. So right now I can send a voice clip to Tesla saying, here's why I disengaged it. But I was thinking about it the other day because like when you have your GPS and you say, I want to go to work, and then it's routing me. It's like, no, I'm going to go around. I want to go a different direction. I have to disengage the system, put a new address in, or I have to tell it to go a different way. Or I just have to like disengage and go the other way. It won't hear me. It won't like know to change the route. And so I realized like when these language models are built in, when XAI builds Grok into a Tesla, and I can now talk to Grok and tell it, hey, reroute me this way because I know there's construction up ahead that you car don't know about. And now I'm just talking and prompting my car. And I don't know if that's near term, but like that will change the way these Teslas work. And so again, I think it's amazing what they're doing. I don't think the tech is anywhere near what they're presenting it to be. I don't think we're really that close to having robocabs that don't need steering wheels without all the cameras that Waymos have. But as a final thought here, on Sunday morning, I woke up and I watched the Starship launch. I don't know if you saw this, Mike, but this was the 5th flight of Starship. This is Elon Musk's rocket that he wants to take humans to Mars with. So if you haven't followed along, SpaceX is an incredible company, engineering marvel they're putting out. So me and my kids and my wife watched the launch of this thing. Now, if you didn't follow along, the goal of this one, because it's all experimental still, was to get the Starship up into orbit and then, or into the atmosphere, above the atmosphere, and then bring the booster back and land a 232 foot, almost the size of a football field, 250 metric ton booster and catch it with basically 2 arms coming off of the tower. It was the most asinine thing when they first presented this. People were like, there's no way you're ever going to do this. Mechazilla, I think they call it. The arms that kind of, come and cut. They did it. On the first try, they caught a 250 ton booster out of the air with 2 legs. Like it just lands on this thing gently. The booster just sits in the air and then it just lands on this thing. I mean, it almost brings tears to your eyes. Like I'm watching this thinking, how did humans do this? It was like one of the most awe-inspiring things I've ever seen happen. And people thought he was crazy to do this. So what I realized in that moment is like, as much as Elon's current behavior on Twitter X drives me insane, like as much time as he's spending on politics and creating like divides and like, it drives me nuts. And I don't care what side of political party you're on. It's like, the way he's using his platform is divisive to one party or the other. I just wish he was spending more time accelerating us toward a better world for humanity. Because even with all the time he's spending tweeting and doing all the other stuff he's doing, he's still driving humanity forward in a way very few people have ever done in human history. And it is amazing to watch. And it's like a beautiful thing to be alive to see these kinds of innovations and scientific breakthroughs and consistently doing the impossible. And so I just like, as much as I get bothered by like the online behavior, I have to recognize like the impact he's making on humanity. And so that leads me back to like, he can achieve anything. Like what he's building with XAI, what he's doing with all it, it's remarkable. And there's other people out there trying to do similar things. And so it's just kind of one of those moments where like you realize humans are pretty incredible, and just kudos to the engineers at SpaceX that did this. And so while the We Robot event was sort of disappointing and the cybercabs aren't coming for 2, 3, 4 years and the robovan may never happen and the Tesla Optimus robots may not be functional for 5 years, like he'll get there if he wants to, is
Yeah.
kind of my main takeaway here. And it's a pretty amazing thing that humans can do this sort of stuff.
So for our third big topic, we've kind of been hearing from, really influential CEOs and builders in AI, and we just got a wide-ranging interview with another one of them that kind of gives us a glimpse of the near future of the industry. So on Sunday, October 13th, the popular BG2 podcast, hosted by VCs Brad Gerstner and Bill Gurley, sat down with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang to talk about the future of Nvidia and AI. And they covered a ton of really useful points that kind of give us some clues as to where we're headed. So they talked about things like the future of compute. Huang predicts a massive increase in demand for AI compute, with clusters of 200,000 to 300,000 GPUs becoming common. Huang expects inference to become increasingly important and grow by, quote, 1 billion times due to chain of reasoning capabilities. NVIDIA is actually focused on enabling fast, interactive inference experiences when you interact with an AI assistant. He believes AI will dramatically increase productivity across industries. He envisions a future where everyone has personal AI assistants capable of complex reasoning and task completion. And Huang actually said he believes AI will change every job, but won't necessarily lead to widespread job losses. He anticipates companies becoming more productive with AI, and if they do that, they'll likely grow and hire more, not less. So, Paul, I know you found a lot to love in this interview. Can you kind of walk us through what is worth paying attention to in this conversation?
Yeah, if you've never watched or listened to an interview with Jensen, you have to do it. Like outside of Steve Jobs, I was trying to think about this last night. Like, I don't know that there's ever been a more impressive CEO, like to listen to speak. And so this podcast is quite technical. Like it does get into some technical details that can be a little abstract if you're not familiar with the terms and things like that. But it's mind blowing. And I think what I love about him is he has this amazing command of the details of his own business, his industry, the technical side. He has an incredible confidence in who they are and what they're doing, including the fact that he gives their like 5-year roadmap to what would appear to be their biggest competitors, like because they're his partners too. He has respect for his peers and competitors, and he has this unwavering belief in his vision for the future. And he just sounds like the coolest guy in the world. Like anyone I've seen interview with, you can tell he's just present. Like it's such a hard thing for a CEO, a public leader, when you know your time is being pulled everywhere and everyone wants to talk to you, to be present and to like make the person you're talking to feel like you're it. You're the only thing they're thinking about. You're the only thing they're doing at that moment. And he did that for an hour and a half with Brad. Like, and he kept saying, like, Brad's because like, hey, I want to be respectful of your time. He's like, no, man, whatever you need. I'm here until we're done. We're going to do this the right way. Like, let's go. And he just kept putting it off and like giving him the time. And it's just remarkable. So one, you'll learn something from him. Two, if you're a leader, like watch how this guy leads. It's amazing to see. I have just tremendous respect for him. So a few key ones, Mike, that I wanted to call out. AGI. So we'll get back to the AGI thing. So Brad asked them, when will we have AGI, which Brad then said has perfect memory of me, can communicate with me, can book a hotel for me, or maybe book a doctor's appointment for me. When you look at the rate of change in the world today, do you think we're going to have that personal assistant in our pocket? And Jensen said, soon, in some form. Yeah, in some form. And that assistant will get better over time. A lot of this is happening because we drove the marginal cost of computing down 100,000 times over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
So he talks about like what NVIDIA is doing. Another thing he said about AI infrastructure that I found fascinating is he talks a lot about how people think NVIDIA is just a chip company. They just make the GPUs that train these models and allow you to do the inference, meaning, you know, use ChatGPT and get responses, or have, AI on devices and get responses. Inference is our use of the AI tool, basically. He said the data center is now the unit of computing. And what he means by that is they're not just building single chips. They're building the infrastructure that allows the building of 100,000 GPU data centers like Elon Musk just built in Memphis. That they're everything that allows the building of that, the wiring, the stacks, the chips, everything. So he said, we're trying to build a brand new one every single year. And every single year too, we deliver 2 or 3 times more performance. As a result, every single year, we reduce the cost by 2 or 3 times. What this means is their innovation in building these data centers, building these clusters of 100, 200,000, 500,000 GPUs eventually together, and then driving that cost down 2 to 3x every year, and including the performance 2 to 3x every year. That is what is making the intelligence explosion possible. That is why Dario and Sam and Sundar can look out 2, 3 years from now and say, well, NVIDIA is going to do this, which enables us to do that. And so he said, I love this quote as a business lesson, as much as NVIDIA. He said, as a company, we want to be situationally aware. And I'm very situationally aware of everything around our company and our ecosystem. I'm aware of all the people doing alternative things and what they're doing. And sometimes it's adversarial to us. Sometimes it's not. I'm very aware of it. And that doesn't change what the purpose of the company is. They were pushing them on like Grok, for example, like faster inference, and not Elon Musk's Grok, but Grok with a Q. They talked about Intel and like the lessons learned from Intel, like having this dominant market positioning. And he's like, we don't care. Like we're aware of it, but we are so focused on this accelerated computing idea that that's all we think about. So he talked about the future of software. First thing we're doing is reinventing computing. So he said, the future is going to be machine learned software everywhere, almost everything from Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Photoshop, Premiere, AutoCAD. It's all going to be machine learned. And for that to happen, we need entirely different computing systems. And he said, there's trillions of dollars in data centers that need to be modernized. We're about 150 billion into it. So he's like kind of laying out their market opportunity. He talked about Elon and this Memphis supercluster they built. And he's like, nobody in the world could do this but Elon. They did in 19 days what would have taken anyone else years to do. And so again, going back to this idea of Elon and his relentless innovation, hearing Jensen talk about that was so key. And then the one that really jumped out to me, you touched on this a little bit with like the reasoning and stuff, but they asked him like, are you using these models at NVIDIA? Like, how is this impacting your company? And he said, our cybersecurity system team today can't run without our own agents. We have agents helping design chips, Hopper, one of their chips, Blackwell, Rubin, none of it would be possible without it. We have AI chip designers, AI software engineers, AI verification engineers. We build them all inside because we have the ability, and we would rather use the opportunity to explore technology ourselves. So Brad then said, NVIDIA is in a league of its own at about 4 million of revenue per employee, which is insane, and 2 million of profits per employee. So he said, you build a culture of efficiency that really has unleashed creativity and innovation and ownership and responsibility. You've broken the mold about kind of functional management. Everybody likes to talk about all your direct reports. Is leveraging of AI the thing that's going to continue to allow you to be hyper creative while at the same time being efficient? He said, NVIDIA has 32,000 employees today. I'm hoping NVIDIA someday has 50,000 with 100 million AI assistants in every single group. So I just like, he's envisioning a near future where they're going to keep scaling. I think they'll be a $10 trillion company within 5 years. They're what, 2.5 trillion now or something like that. So they're massive, and they're going to do this. They'll probably triple the value of the company, triple their revenue, if not more, by only adding another 18,000 employees, because they're going to have hundreds of millions of AI agents. And they're already building these agents within the company. And so he's seeing the future. And so again, it's so critical to listen to these interviews. If nothing else, synthesize it, drop it into Notebook LM and have a conversation with, like, get the key points out, because the future is happening right in front of us. And these leaders are telling us what it's going to look like. And if we just sit back and think it's all sci-fi, we are not going to get there and see around the corner. And that's the opportunity we all have, is to listen to this stuff and then prepare for it, prepare our companies, prepare our industries for it.
Well, when you hear what NVIDIA is actually doing and what he envisions happening very soon, a lot of this stuff we've talked about in this episode doesn't sound like sci-fi anymore. It's the exact playbook we just talked about.
Yeah. And you understand why they're worth so much money, why their stock is crazy. I've
Yeah.
told this story before, like the day ChatGPT came out, their stock closed at $169 a share. It touched $1,200 a share before a 10-for-1 split. I don't know where it's at today, like back at 120, 130, something like that. But that's after a 10-for-1 split. The reason is, and the reason why people like me are so bullish on NVIDIA in the future, is nothing. And when you hear this interview, you realize none of this happens. None of this intelligence explosion is possible without continued innovation driven by NVIDIA. They are the core of all of it.
All right, let's dive into some rapid fire this week. So first up, 2 of the 2024 Nobel Prizes, one in physics, one in chemistry, have put a spotlight on AI because they've been related to AI advancements. So the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to John Hopfield and Jeff Hinton for their pioneering work on artificial neural networks. So Hopfield, he had a 1982 development of the Hopfield network model, which explained how the brain recalled memories using partial information. And Hinton, who we've talked about many times, often called the godfather of AI, developed the Boltzmann machine in 1985 and further advanced neural network research. Now, Hinton expressed both excitement and concern about the future of AI in his acceptance of this, saying that instead of exceeding people in physical strength, this will be comparable with the Industrial Revolution. Instead of exceeding people in physical strength, it's going to exceed people in intellectual ability. He hopes his Nobel Prize will bring more attention to the risks associated with advanced AI. Now, soon after, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry this year was awarded to 3 scientists for their work on protein structure prediction and design, which heavily involves AI. David Baker of the University of Washington received half the prize for his work on computational protein design. And another familiar name comes into the picture because the other half was jointly awarded to Demis Hassabis and John Jumper of Google DeepMind for their development of AlphaFold, which predicts protein structures with unprecedented accuracy using artificial intelligence. Paul, we've talked about Jeff Hinton and Demis Hassabis countless times on the podcast. You've said yourself you expect Demis to win a Nobel Prize at some point, and here we are.
Yeah, I laughed when this one happened, because that is, like I've said on the podcast before, I used Demis's definition of what is AI, the science of making machines smart. I, for 6 years, have been using that in my keynote presentations. I'll poll the room who knows what Demis is. If you're lucky, you get 1 or 2 hands. And I'll often say he's going to be one of the most important people in human history. He'll win multiple Nobel Prizes. And here you go. Here's the first one. He'll win more. Like, he's not done. But yeah, it's fascinating. It was interesting to see some of the scientific community pushback of, like, these aren't chemists, like these aren't people who should be like winning these awards. They're AI people. But I think that the lines have now, been crossed and the barrier broken down. And I think you're going to see a lot of AI researchers being recognized for their impact in a lot of different industries in the future. So, congratulations to them. It's an incredible achievement.
So next up, we kind of want to revisit some thoughts around AI's impact on search. We have a couple of reports and stats coming out that just kind of paint a tough picture for Google, which is seeing its grip on the market loosen as competitors and AI chip away at its dominance. According to research firm eMarketer, Google's share of U.S. search ad market is expected to drop below 50% next year, first time in over a decade that has happened. Amazon is emerging as a formidable challenger, expecting to capture about 22% of the market this year with a growth rate of almost 18% compared to Google's 7.6% growth. TikTok, the short form video platform, is making waves by allowing brands to target ads based on user search queries, which directly challenges Google's core business. Perplexity, the AI-powered search engine, plans to introduce ads under its AI-generated answers. The company processed 340 million queries in September. And Google is now rolling out ads in AI-generated summaries at the top of search results, starting with mobile searches in the US. So basically, Google is getting attacked on a number of different fronts here. We've known that AI was eating into search for a while, but also other companies are eating into ad revenue. So this kind of poses like a big challenge to traditional web traffic models. And SEO expert Rand Fishkin, very, very well-known voice in the SEO industry, kind of pointed out this past week that Google's not just facing competition from Amazon, TikTok, and AI. We're also seeing all these platforms increasingly try to keep users on their sites by providing answers without you having to click away. So he cites one survey from Ahrefs that shows nearly 97% of web pages get zero traffic from Google. He talks about Andy Crestodina's 2024 blogging statistics report that shows getting traffic and attracting visitors is now the number one challenge for bloggers out there. And Fishkin's own experience shows that what he calls zero-click searches are on the rise. Basically, AI-generated overviews, even in Google, are taking over a huge part of the results page for many queries. So basically, he wraps this up saying, my position on this is that zero-click is taking over everything. Google is trying to answer searches without clicks. Facebook wants to keep people on Facebook. LinkedIn wants to keep people on LinkedIn. He also thinks AI overviews in Google are taking a tremendous amount more traffic than when he measured them back in June of this year. And basically says, look, content creators, marketers, you have to adapt to this new reality by, you're competing for limited traffic that's still available through traditional means, but also really focusing on basically a zero-click content approach, which is creating native content directly on platforms where people are engaging instead of including links, trying to get them away from the platform. Stop trying to fight this, go zero click. So Paul, we definitely have seen some of this start to play out. It seems like zero click content may be a viable path forward. Do you agree with that? Like, what does this all mean for search traffic?
I'm not going to disagree with Rand and Andy. I mean, they're far greater experts at this stuff than I am. What I would say is, like, we're in October 2024. If you are involved in your company's content strategy, impact on website traffic, online advertising, you better be like going deep on this stuff. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty going into 2025. And you got to be getting locked in and figuring out where it's at. The approach we take, and Mike, maybe we go into this a little bit more another time. Mike's our chief content officer, so he thinks more about this than I do. But I mean, the way I've kind of thought about it as a CEO is like, I just don't think about organic traffic that much anymore. Like I used to care a lot about it. I used to think about our website traffic all the time. I think far more about the growth of our podcast, the growth of our YouTube channel. I just think about where are people at, where can we be that they are, and where can we create value in a proprietary, like unique point of view. And so I've said this before, I think, but we're a podcast driven company. Like we create this original content. We have these unique perspectives. We come up every week and we show up and we do it. We turn that into videos. We cut it into shorts. We put, the transcripts online. Hopefully that gets found in language model. Like we're just going to create value for people and hope the rest sort of takes care of itself, and then try and be in as many distribution channels as we can. So we're there to be helpful. And to me, that's like the safest approach right now is like our business. If our organic traffic went away tomorrow, I don't even know that I care. Like it's not critical anymore. And it took us a couple of years to shift to that.
Yeah.
But I think, is that fair to sum up our strategy, Mike? I mean, it's basically 100%. What it's become.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we've also been both smart and lucky in building up an owned audience in the form of our contact database as well over time. 100%. Yeah. So, we have that to, if you said like, if organic traffic went to zero, we have ways to get in front of our audience that are not just hoping they stumble upon us.
Right. Slack community. Yeah. Just create value for people and, have options. If you're relying on organic traffic, it's going to be painful 2025.
All right, next up, researchers at Apple just released a paper that questions the true reasoning abilities of large language models. So, this study suggests that even state of the art AI models may not be thinking or reasoning in the way that we as humans understand these concepts. They basically conducted a simple experiment where they gave AI models, including like GPT-o1 mini, basic math problems. And when given a straightforward math problem, the models could usually solve that. But when they presented the problem with additional irrelevant pieces of information, the models often stumbled. So instead of just asking them to solve a math problem, they might mention some, extraneous information about some of the details of the problem that the LLM would then like latch onto and get and hit like a stumbling block. They found this pattern of failure consistent across hundreds of similar questions with slight modifications. And basically, they state that, quote, we hypothesize that the decline in reasoning performance, is due to the fact that current LLMs are not capable of genuine logical reasoning. Instead, they attempt to replicate the reasoning steps observed in their training data. So, Paul, does this result surprise you at all? I mean, we talk quite often colloquially about these models' ability to reason and how that capability is growing. Like, should we be talking about these differently, thinking about this differently?
All this tells me is the leading labs can't agree on anything. Again, you have like Jan LeCun, Turing Award winner at
Yeah.
Meta, who thinks language models are as dumb as a cat. Like literally, there was an article that like I don't know, it was the New York Times or whatever over the
Yeah.
weekend. That was the headline. Like he thinks they're basically as smart as a cat, if that. So you have OpenAI thinking we're within a year of breakthrough in building agents and automated organizations. You have Dario Amodei thinking 2026, everything changes. We have powerful AI. And then you have Apple saying these things aren't even really reasoning. It it's wild. Like they do. And so that's all it tells me is it just reaffirms that people don't agree on any of this stuff, even the people like embedded building it. And there's some people who say like the language model don't really understand AI. Jeff Hinton, who's worried about it, thinks that they do. And so like they just don't. Like the smartest people in the world have been working on these things for decades, can't agree on what they're actually doing and how they do it. That's really all this tells me.
So take with a grain of salt, anyone telling
Yeah.
you for sure.
It's like anything else in life. It's why you have to listen to all sides. It's why you have to be open-minded and like allow people to present cases and allow yourself to consider their arguments. And then at some point you arrive at like, well, here's what I actually think. Like I kind of believe this. It and that's like the problem with our society is like people just aren't that open-minded. People get stuck on like they're right about everything and they have to stand their ground instead of stepping back and saying, well, maybe it's not reasoning. I don't know. Like
Right. Right.
let's dig back and like look at the research. So hopefully the people at OpenAI are looking at this saying that's an interesting finding. Let's see what they found. Like, and maybe it affects what they do. So I don't know. That's how I always feel about everything. It's like a life lesson, I guess. It's like just I don't understand why people have to be so set in their ways and so convinced they're right about everything. They can't just step back and like listen to solid arguments. It seemed like a well-researched paper.
Yeah.
I'll read through it and see if there's anything there I kind of like changes my perspective on things or not.
All right. So next up, Zoom has a couple new big AI features that may be worth paying attention to. One is a feature coming out that's going to allow you to create a custom AI avatar of yourself. This is allegedly coming out in early 2025, and you'll be able to record a video of yourself, and Zoom's AI will then create a lifelike avatar that looks and sounds like you. You can then use this to send a brief video message to colleagues using Zoom's Clips feature. Basically, just type out what message you want your avatar to deliver. AI takes care of the rest. Zoom also, a little closer to now, introduced the AI Companion 2.0. It's the next generation of their AI virtual assistant. So this basically is a side panel interface that has AI baked right into Zoom, integration with third-party apps like Outlook and Gmail. You can generate action items from meeting summaries, convert them into tasks, summarize unread messages in your team chat channels, and use real-time web search capabilities to get up-to-date information. They're also adding a custom add-on for AI Companion, priced at $12 per month per user. Basically, it allows you to access a bunch of other customizable features to tailor the AI experience to your specific needs, including integration with apps like Jira, Zendesk, and HubSpot, and personalized coaching for improving communication skills. So, Paul, in episode 104, we covered how Zoom CEO Eric Yuan saw us moving towards a world where he was hyping up, quote, digital twins that essentially attend meetings on our behalf. Both you and I were deeply skeptical of this future, but are we getting closer to it?
Yeah, so I'm going to back up my previous soapbox about being open-minded, and I'm going to tell you I'm not open-minded on this. I don't want to talk to your avatar, and I don't want your avatar showing up in meetings instead of you. So, like, if we're ever doing business together or having a conversation, please don't send your avatar instead. And if you want to send me a video message, just record it and send it. I really don't want to see your avatar. I'm aware the technology exists. I'm not going to be impressed that you're using an avatar to send me a message. Like, I don't think those opinions are going to change. I will try and be open-minded about the future, but neither of those things is interesting to me in the least. So yes, I would say, and if you've been watching I'm representing my Cleveland Guardians today. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll be heading toward game 2 of the championship series by this time. If you are listening to this on Tuesday, Zoom AI Companion was all over the American League Division Series game. Like the ads were everywhere on the pitcher's mound. So, yeah, they're making a big splash with AI Companion. Listen, I love some of the AI features of Zoom. I don't love the vision for where the CEO wants to take Zoom. So yeah, I don't know. Like, good on them, but please don't send me your AI avatar once you can do it in Zoom.
Yeah, if you're having to take the time to type out the message your avatar is reading, I think an email could also be helpful here.
Just click the record button. Like,
right,
email, whatever.
Whatever, yeah. All right. So next up, Apple's highly anticipated iOS 18.1 update promises to introduce the first wave of Apple Intelligence features. This is reportedly now set for release on October 28th, 2024. This is a little later than expected. Apple needed some extra time to make sure everything was working properly. This will bring a suite of new AI-powered features to iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 16 users, including writing tools, a new Siri UI, though the full revamped AI experience will not arrive until later. Notification summaries, memory creation in Photos, a cleanup feature in Photos, and intelligent breakthrough with notifications. Now, some of the more eagerly anticipated AI features are coming out much later. So we're supposed to get ChatGPT support and an image playground in December 2024. And then early 2025 is when we are expected to get the fully revamped Siri with much smarter intelligence. So many are kind of questioning why Apple heavily marketed all these AI features for the iPhone 16 launch when some of the most interesting stuff won't be available till next year. So Paul, I guess I have the same question. Like, why is Apple hyping up all of this if it's not ready for prime time?
I have no idea. It's one of the weirdest things Apple's ever done. I don't understand it. It's like on par with launching the Vision Pro and then doing nothing to support it for 6 months, except this is higher profile because you're running all these Snoop Dogg ads with it's Snoop Dogg and who else is in it?
I forget who else.
There was some influencer that my daughter knew.
Yeah,
I had no idea. So they have like 3 high-paid celebrities running these ads nonstop during like baseball playoffs. I mean, they're spending tens of millions of dollars promoting something that doesn't exist, pissing people off when they buy the phone and it's the same phone they just had. It has no capabilities. I don't know. I don't understand it. I have no idea why they're doing this, other than it must have been a last minute decision to yank the Apple Intelligence from the launch, and they'd already done all the ad buys and all the ad creative, and they had no choice. That's my only guess, is like the ball was rolling on the marketing side and they had to basically just take the black eye. And I can imagine this isn't going over well within Apple. This is not the kind of mistake Apple would normally make.
All right. So our last topic this week is about AI-powered job applications. So according to some new reporting from 404 Media, AI-powered bots are now applying for jobs on behalf of human candidates. They profile a new tool that's currently trending on GitHub that kind of shows what's possible. It's called Auto Jobs Applier AI Hawk, and it allows users to automatically apply for jobs on LinkedIn at scale using AI. So I'm going to quote 404 Media's description here of the tool, that it is essentially a Python program that navigates LinkedIn and uses an LLM. You could use OpenAI's GPT products or Gemini, both work, to generate custom cover letters and resumes based on a series of biographical details that a user codes into a script and tweaks as necessary based on the job description and other information that the company has put on LinkedIn. Apparently, this program can be set up in about 15 minutes, requires some basic coding knowledge and an API key for the AI tool that you're using. But some users report after that, they're getting interviews and job offers within days. One of them was quoted as saying, "I've been using the platform for a little over 3 months now, during which I applied to 2,843 roles. In that time, I've had 4 interviews, received 1 offer for a senior data engineer role at 85,000 pounds, I assume in the UK, and I'm awaiting feedback on another offer pending the result of a test." This also appears to be cost effective. One user applied to 17 jobs in an hour at a cost of 34 cents in open AI tokens. Now, 404 Media says LinkedIn is apparently aware of this tool. It prohibits these types of automated applications. One of the tool's co-founders says he's already been banned from LinkedIn. So, Paul, how ready is the world of HR and recruiting for what's possible now?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm going to read one other quote from the article. People should go read it. It's just a prelude. This is one of those early demonstrations. Someone proved this could work. It required a little bit of coding. Give it 2 months. Somebody will have another one of these things and be like whack-a-mole for LinkedIn. It is against their terms of use, but it's not going to stop them from doing it.
Right.
But here's the excerpt. "The sudden explosion in popularity of AI Hawk means that we now live in a world where people are using AI-generated resumes and cover letters to automatically apply for jobs, many of which will be reviewed by automated AI software, and where people are sometimes interviewed by AI, creating a bizarre loop where humans have essentially been removed from the job application and hiring process. Essentially, robots are writing the cover letters for other robots to read, with uncertain effects for human beings who apply for jobs in the old-fashioned way." Again, we start out with Dario. The future's happening right now. This is already going on. And if you're not aware of it, welcome to reality. It's weird and it's going to get more bizarre. And no one is really prepared for what this means. The same thing is probably happening in colleges. You have admissions letters. You have all these things being created to try and get into schools and apply to school. Everything is going to be automated. And then we're on the business side going to create automation systems to review the automated submitted things. And at the end of the day, it comes back to who do you know? Because human relationships are probably going to be the only thing left that is differentiated in this world.
No kidding. Well, that's a note to end on here. Some final reminders as we wrap up here. We have our weekly newsletter that goes out and summarizes everything going on in AI each and every week. It's called This Week in AI. You can find it at marketingaiinstitute.com/newsletter. Please also leave us a review of the podcast if you have not already. We very much appreciate and value all the feedback. And one fun fact I'm going to leave us with here, Paul, because as we've talked about AGI this whole time, I've been just keep reminding myself of one of the initial authors you and I read way back when Marketing AI Institute was getting started, our friend Ray Kurzweil, who's the original OG, the predictor of AI, where it's going. And he has consistently maintained, according to Perplexity, since 1999, his arrival of artificial general intelligence prediction was 2029. So people thought he was crazy back then. We are getting less crazy now.
I will add to that. So Shane Legg, one of the co-founders of Google DeepMind, and Demis, when they started DeepMind back in 2010, and shortly before it, they saw AGI as a 20-year project, which would put us around 2028, 2029. Demis was asked recently, "Are you on track?" And he said something to the effect of, "It's rare that a 20-year project ends up being right, but yeah, we're roughly on track for it to be a 20-year project," meaning Demis also sees the next few years being the achievement of whatever we decide AGI is. So,
wow, that's a way to start the week here.
There you go.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you as always for breaking everything down for us.
Thanks, Mike. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to the AI Show. Visit marketingaiinstitute.com to continue your AI learning journey and join more than 60,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to the weekly newsletter, downloaded the AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken our online AI courses, and engaged in the Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.